So let's briefly just kind of discuss one of these assumptions we've been making so far in this macroeconomic model and talk about that maybe we need to start to relax this assumption, which is kind of what we're going to end up doing next week. So kind of mentioned this a couple times, but this demand determined output. And essentially we've been kind of modeling the demand side of the economy right now and kind of assuming that the supply side can just produce whatever the demand side needs without having to change their costs or their prices as a result. So we've kind of talked about kind of three big issues, three concepts we've kind of learned about are equilibrium, national income, this idea of a simple multiplier, how changes in autonomous aggregate expenditure are going to cause changes in Y. So the simple multiplier. And demand determined output. And these last two are really linked to this assumption we've been making about constant prices. So we've been have been assuming that firms can increase production, for instance, without having to change prices, to change delta for change prices. This might not be a bad assumption if we're really far below potential output. There might be lots of quote unquote slack in the economy or slack in production where firms can ramp up production without having to raise costs. Not a bad assumption if Y is substantially, or I'll just say below Y star. So there's lots of slack in production is what I mean by that. But it's not going to be a great assumption if our economy is kind of overheating or if Y is above Y star. Well, firms can't just keep on increasing production without incurring larger costs. And so next week we're going to think about introducing price levels into this economy. So next module, introduce price levels. And so price levels are just going to be part of this model where we're not kind of having this exogenous or outside the model change to price levels. They're going to be determined within the model. So, this week we talked about, if Canadian prices went up, that's going to change, exports and imports. Now we're going to try to get price levels into the model. So it's not just some outside factor that's influencing the model, it's part of the model itself. And this is going to lead us to talking about aggregate supply and aggregate demand curve, which is the economy's demand curve and the economy's supply curve. And kind of what we've almost been assuming right now is that this aggregate supply curve is flat, and we've been really only talking about kind of what makes up this aggregate demand curve. But that's what's going to happen next. It's a bit more complicated, and we're going to kind of use the model we've developed so far to derive this new model.